طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We started talking about the routing loops, which is one of the critical issues that any routing protocol should deal with. So routing loops talks about the fact that the routing tables become, for some reason, inconsistent. Okay, and based on that, the packets will be routed by mistake in a form of a loop, and they will keep looping unnecessarily until that. If you remember in 455 we discussed one field, an IP address called and the IP header called a TTL, the time to live, and until the time to live reaches to a certain value, the packet will be dropped. But before that, the packet will go into a loop unnecessarily for quite some time. And remember here that the main issue of routing loop happened because of the fact that this router removed this entry from the routing table and also allowed router 2 to update router 3 with the new routing entry. So remember that carefully. So that was the origin of the problem. That was the origin of the problem, because based on this origin we will try to resolve that issue in the techniques that we will discuss today. So routing loops are caused by incorrectly configured static routes. So if the administrator, we said that the static routes, they are configured manually. So if the administrator is not careful enough, he or she may actually put some entries in the routing table that makes the routing tables inconsistent, in which case the routing loop will happen. Incorrectly configured route redistribution, which is the example that we talked about in the previous slide. The route redistribution happens in such a way that makes the routing tables inconsistent, in which case the routing loops will happen, which is the example that we just talked about. Slow conversions, again we said that convergence is a state of consistency based on which any received route will not have any new information based on the information that I already have. But until this conversion state happen, the routing tables may be actually inconsistent, in which case again the routing loops will happen. Incorrectly configured discard routes. Also, this is as part of the example that we just talked about. If any destination network or any of the network goes down, the fact that you propagate this change has to be done in a careful way. Otherwise, again, based on the example that we just talked about, the propagation of the fact that the network has gone down was not done in the correct way. Okay, because I allowed router 2 to update router 3 with the fact that it has an entry to a destination network that has become down, and that was wrong. Okay, so that will also cause routing loops. So what is the implication of routing loops? Well, when the routing tables become inconsistent and the routing loops will happen, what is the implication of this? What is the result of this? Well, there is an excess use of bandwidth, of course, because I keep forwarding the packets back and forth unnecessarily, even though the destination of this packet may be down, or maybe in a different direction altogether, and I'm trying to send the packet back and forth in a wrong way, so it will never reach the destination, in which case I'm just using the bandwidth on the links. I'm also using the CPU resources, because every time a router will receive the packet, it will have to process the packet by looking up the address, the destination address in this packet in the routing table. So it consumes some CPU resources. And again, after doing this, I forward the packet incorrectly, which causes routing loops. So I'm doing unnecessary CPU processing, whereas all the processing happens in totally incorrect way. The network convergence is degraded. So if you keep updating any network change incorrectly, the fact of the matter is this will cause the conversion state to be degraded, in which case it will become very hard, as we will see in a minute, it will become very hard to get again to the conversion state. The example that we just talked about updated the change in the network incorrectly, which resulted in the fact that router 2 updated router 3 with a destination network which is down. So router 3 will use that network from now on, and there will be no conversions. So this state is a state of no conversions, because you allowed an incorrect update to happen. Okay, so this is a phenomenon, and unless you do it very carefully, the inconsistency will cause the fact that conversions may never be achieved. Okay, the routing updates may be lost or not processed in a timely manner because of consuming the resources of the network. So based on that, routing loops may cause a phenomenon which is called setting a maximum or count to infinity. And this phenomena happens in the previous example that we just talked about. We said that we allowed router 2 to update router 3 with the fact that this network, so router 2 updated router 3 with the fact that this network, I have a route to this network with a hop count of 2, right? So this was the origin of the problem. But who said that the situation will stop at this point? Router 3 may send a route update to router 2 with the fact that it has a route to destination network 10.4.0.0 with a hop count of 2. So router 3 will process that update. Okay, so now process 3 will the router 3 will say, okay, what I have is that I have a route to destination network 10.4.0.0 with a hop count of 2. Okay, this is the one that I have. Or sorry, it was 1 originally, with a hop count of 1. And you're telling me that you have a route to this destination network with a hop count of 2. So based on the logic that we know, I should discard this route, right? Because I have a better route. But I may actually accept this route. Why? Because the router 3 updated this route as a fresh route entry, fresh. So when it sends a route update, router 2 may actually accept this route update because the route entry that is coming is fresher than the one that it has. So sometimes I can accept a route entry with a metric which is worse than the one that I have if I realize that this route entry is fresher. It's fresh. Okay? And that's because I need to account for topology changes in the network. So when there is any topology change and I say, no, what you are giving me is worse than the one that I have, so I will discard it, then there will never be any accounting for any topology change, right? But in some cases you can accept the route update with a worse metric if you realize that the incoming route entry has a fresher value based on the one that you have. So in which case router 2 may in fact accept the route entry and may increment the route metric here to become 3. Okay, and this becomes like a fresh route. which will be forwarded to router 1 as a fresh route entry with a hop count of 3. In which case, router 1 will update this hop count as 4, which becomes a fresh route, and so on, and it will keep propagating. Okay? So this situation may cause the fact that what we normally say like a chain effect. So the route update will keep going back and forth in the network and will keep incrementing the hop count. So for that purpose, most of the distant vector routing protocols, they use a mechanism called count to infinity. And infinity here is not really infinity. Infinity for REP version 1 and REP version 2 is actually 16. So 16 indicates for REP infinity, which means that once, if the hop count reaches to 16, this means that this network is unreachable. This network is unreachable. Okay? And as we can see, if the hop count becomes 16, this will prevent the routing loops. Because if a router receives a packet which is distant to 10.4.0.0, it checks the hop count, it becomes 16, which means that this network is unreachable. So it stops forwarding the packet. So it will not go into loops. Okay? So the situation that we talked about before is the first stage until the count to infinity happens. So until the count to infinity happens, you will keep forwarding the packet in a loop. But if the route update is propagated back and forth until the hop count becomes 16, so this indicates to all routers that this network is unreachable. And this, by default, will prevent the routing loops. So count to infinity is a phenomenon. I don't do anything special. So this is the default operation of the routing protocol. If the update is fresher than the one that I have, if the update is fresh, then I accept it, even if it's worse. Okay, and this will cause the propagation of this route entry to propagate through the network, and it will keep incrementing until it reaches the infinity, which is in that case 16. Okay, 16 indicates unreachable. The only thing that will break the count to infinity if, for example, this network comes back up again, or if this network gets connected to another router here or here. In that case, a new fresh route entry will get into the routing table and it will break the loop of count to infinity. So this will stop. If this network comes back up again, then I will update this route entry to 0, and this will become a fresh one. This will become a fresh one. Then in that case, I will send it to others, and others have to accept it because this is a fresher one. This is a fresher route entry, so they will accept it. And again, the count to infinity will break, will stop. Okay? So the count to infinity is actually a condition, is a phenomenon. There's no special mechanism here. I don't do anything special. This is the normal operation of all the routing protocols. That's what they do. If the incoming route update is fresh, then I accept it, regardless. Okay? I'm saying that because in the later on we will talk about special mechanisms that we can use in order to prevent routing loops, other than the count to infinity. Count to infinity happens by default. But until the count to infinity happens, I'm still in routing loops. Right? And the conversions, remember that this is considered a state of conversions. This is considered a state of convergence, right? Because this means that this destination network becomes unreachable in all routing, in all routers, which is correct, right? So all routers will store the fact that this network is unreachable until this network comes back up again, in which case a new fresh entry will get inserted in one of the routing tables with a hop count of 0, and this will be fresh, and this will be propagated to all the other routers. But this is considered a state of convergence. But this state of convergence is slow convergence, right? Because I had to increment back and forth the route entry for quite some time until I reached that state. And until this state is reverted, there will be routing loops, right? So the route entry will keep incrementing. In the meantime, if I get a packet, I will forward it incorrectly, and the routing loops will still happen until all the routers count to 16 or count to infinity, in which case this is a new state of convergence, and no one will forward any packets to this network.
We have a large network, and one of the network has only 16.
Right. This is a very good point. So here we're talking about a very simple example of 3 routers only. But imagine if that route propagation happens in a very large network. So count to infinity in that case will take quite a long time. That's why we said that routing loops cause a degraded state of convergence. So this is a state of convergence that it should happen. However, because we didn't do anything special, achieving this new state of convergence took a very long time, especially if the network is very large. Here we're talking about a very, very simple example. But in reality, the network may be very large, in which case this may take forever, right? So this is the default operation. However, luckily, most of the distant vector routing protocols, they have special handling for routing loops, okay? Which can, okay? So the first technique, this is a technique. Again, count to infinity is not a special technique. This happens naturally. However, here we're talking about a specific technique. A technique requires extra handling, extra processing in order to prevent this state of routing loops. So this method talks about preventing routing loops with what we call a hold down timer. A hold down timer, okay? So this is another timer. Remember we talked about one timer before, which is the periodic timer, right? We said that the route updates are periodic, in which case you always have to start a timer, and when it expires after 30 seconds, we said that rep by default uses a period of 30 seconds, right? After 30 seconds, you initiate a route update, which you have to collect all the information in the routing table and send it in a route update, right? So this is an extra timer. It's called a hold down timer. So what happens when a network becomes unreachable, when this network becomes unreachable, I will not remove the entry. I will not remove it. Okay? Because this was the origin of the problem. I played like stupid and I removed the entry without looking at the implication. But this time I'm going to play it smart. I will not remove this entry. But I will mark this entry as a frozen entry. And I will update the other routers that remember that this entry is now frozen. And the entry is defined by destination address. So I will inform router 2 that this entry is now frozen, which means do not accept any route update for this destination network for a period of time. Why? Why I'm specifying a period of time? Because this network may go intermittently into a state of disconnection, but it may come back up again within like 1 second or so. Okay? So remember that this entry is now frozen, but it's there. When I update router 2 that this entry is frozen, router update will start what we call a hold down timer. During that hold down timer, it will not accept any route update for that destination. So if it receives any route update from router 1 that, by the way, I have a route to this destination network with a hop count of 2, I will not accept it. Router 2, if it sends a route update to router 3 that I have a route to this destination network with a hop count of 1, router 3 will not accept it. But all of them will keep this entry in the routing tables. Which means that if router 1 or 2 or 3, if they receive a packet distant to this network, they will still forward. They will still forward. But this will not cause a loop in that case. This will not cause a loop in that case, because router 3, if a packet is distant to this network, router 3 will not forward it to router 2. صح? Because the routing table says that I have a direct connection. So it will not forward it here. So in that case, the routing loop will not happen. Right? But I'm still forwarding the packets to this destination network. What is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is that if this network goes intermittently into an on-off state, and it may come back up again in a matter of 1 second or 2 seconds, right? So if that happens, I will again update the routing entry as it's not frozen anymore, and I will inform router 2 that خلاص, you can reset your hold down timer, and this network is back in operation and everything is fine. Okay? If this network does not come back up again, then router 2 will start a hold down timer, and during the hold down timer, router 2 will mark this entry as frozen. Do not update this entry. During the period of the hold down timer. Hold down timer, I think the duration of the hold down timer, if I remember correctly, maybe around maybe like 3 minutes or 2 minutes, something like that. Okay? So if during that duration the network does not come back up again, the hold down timer will mark this entry as permanently unusable. And similarly in router 1, permanently unusable. Exactly. R3 will initiate that process. So R3 will inform them that pay attention now that this network is intermittently down. I'm not sure if it will come back up again, but please start a hold down timer and wait for any further instructions, because it may come back up again, in which case I will inform you. That's what this means. So R2 will use the hold down timer. If the hold down timer expires and you did not receive any instruction from router 3 that this network has come back up again, then you mark it as permanently unavailable. So the good thing about that is that once this situation happens, I prevented the routing loops right away. So this is unlike the count to infinity, because the count to infinity, until it reaches the state that the hop count is 16, there was routing loops happening. But here, in a matter of 0 seconds, I updated router 2 and router 1 that this network is now intermittently down and there will be no routing loops. There will still be some forwarding, but no routing loops. Okay? The forwarding will happen just in case that the network comes back up again. If the network comes back up again, then router 3 will say, okay, everything is back to normal, and it will send to router 2 that, okay, this network is now back in operation, and router 2 will stop the hold down time, If that hold down timer expires, then router 2 and router 1 will mark this entry as permanently unavailable. So here, I prevented the routing loops from happening in time 0, once the event happened. Unlike the count to infinity. I had to wait for a new state of convergence to happen in order for the routing loops to be eliminated. Okay? Any confusion? Because it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Another technique which relies on the fact that, remember that the origin of the problem of routing loops was initiated from the fact that I allowed router 2 to update router 3 with a destination network which is connected to router 3. This was the origin of the problem in the example that we talked about in the beginning of the lecture. Router 2 updated router 3 about this destination network 10.4.0.0. Okay, so this was the main cause. So rep version 1 and version 2, they sometimes use, which is not by default happening, but the administrator can turn this on or off. It's called split horizon rule. Split horizon means that you have to store in every routing entry, you have to store where it came from. Where this route entry came from. Okay? Why? Because this was the origin of the problem. I did not store the fact that 10.4.0.0 has come from router 3, in which case I sent route update about the destination network 10.4.0.0 to router 3, where it actually came from. Which means that router 3 is the initiator of any information related to this destination network. So it doesn't make any sense that you assume that you have the information, you have new information to someone who already gave you that information. It doesn't make any sense. So split horizon rule says very simply, I have to store where the route update came from, and then when I send the route update, I will send only route updates to the routers that did not give me this route update initially. Which means that when router 2 sends a route update to router 3, it will not send a route update about 10.4.0.0. So router 2 will send to router 3 route update about 10.2.0.0, about 10.1.0.0, but not 10.3 or 10.4. This is what split horizon means. I will split the horizon, and then I will inform people on my right hand side about the information that I received from the left hand side. And I will update the people on the left hand side about the information that I received from the right hand side. You see what I mean? So in that case, this requires special handling now. It's not easy, because I have to keep track where this route update came from, so I report it on this side. And if it comes from this side, I will only report it on this side. But it's not like blind update where I broadcast all the routing table to all the to all directions. No, it's not like that anymore. I have to split the horizon, and I have to figure out if it's coming from the right, send it to the left. If it's coming from the left, send it to the right. And I have to split in the routing table and figure out that this entry came from the right, so I send it to the left. And this entry came from the left, so I send it to the right. So I can ask you now a very simple question. What is the logic? Router 2 will send router 3. Which entries? Router 1 will send router 2. Which entries? Using the split horizon rule. So in split horizon, it's very simple. I have to split the horizon. Whatever is coming from the left, I have to send it on the right. Whatever is coming from the right, I have to send it to the left. And I have to keep track where each entry came from. So if I do that, routing loops will not happen. Why? Because the origin of the problem was the fact that router 2 updated router 3 about the information of a network which is directly connected to it, which used to be directly connected to it. And that was the origin of the whole problem. So with the split horizon rule, I can simply prevent this from happening, because router 2 will never send router 3 any information about 10.4.0.0. Will not happen. Okay? So this is split horizon. Variation of the split horizon, which is what we call split horizon with Poisson reverse. So again, we talked about now 3 methods of preventing the routing loops. The first one we said happens by default, which is count to infinity. It happens by default, naturally. But it degrades the state of convergence, because until the state of convergence happens, I'm still going into routing loops. The second method was split horizon. Split horizon prevents, in time 0, prevents the routing loops from happening. Okay? Sorry, the hold down timer. Sorry, I said this. The hold down timer was the second method, which stops the routing loops from happening in time 0. And then, until the hold down timer expires, the route entry after that becomes permanently unusable or unreachable. Right? The split horizon rule splits the network, and I have to keep track where each route entry came from, so I send it on the other side. And I have to keep track where the routing entry came from. So this one is a special a small variation of the split horizon. It's called split horizon with Poisson reverse. In order to speed the state of convergence, I can actually what happens here is that I combine the count to infinity with the split horizon rule. So Poisson reverse here, meaning that I will update the hop count of this network as 16. Okay? When I do that, I will send a special update called Poisson update. The Poisson update will be the only exception for the split horizon, which means that the Poisson update will get forwarded to router 2. Okay? So router 2 will update its entry to 16. And remember that the main difference is that here, the count to infinity happens in one stage. So I updated this entry to 16 in one stage, whereas for the first method, I had to wait for the route change to propagate back and forth and to increment, which may take, as you said, if the network is large, it may take forever. Here, I will combine the two methods. I will use split horizon, but the only exception is that I will update this as unreachable in one stage, and I will send what they call, this is a triggered update, it's called Poisson update. I will send it to router 2. And router 2 will update again in one stage that this network is unreachable. Unless if router 2 now figured out a route to this network which is different from this. Yani if this network has become down, but it has connected directly to router 2, for example. Imagine that there is an instantaneous change in the network, that this network is down here and it got connected to router 2. So if router 2 receives the Poisson update, it will not update this as unreachable because it's directly connected to it. It will not update. It will not take this Poisson update. But if router 2 does not have any new route to this network, it will update the fact that this network is now unreachable, which is valid from the split horizon rule point of view. From the split horizon rule, if the update is coming from this side, I will accept it and I will update this as unreachable. Okay? The only difference that will override the split horizon rule is that now R2 will have to send back this Poisson update confirming to R1 to R3 that indeed this has become unreachable. And this only happens because of the fact that router 2 will have to confirm that it does not have any other route to this network other than the one that came from R3. So R2 will send just a confirmation. So this is a Poisson update response to confirm to router 3 that indeed I updated this network as unreachable, so this is now permanently unreachable. And as a result, it will forward this Poisson update to router 1. Router 1 will do the same. If it has a route, another route, if this destination network is directly connected to it, or it has any other route, then it will not update its routing table to 16. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then it will update this as 16 and it will send back a Poisson update response. So the Poisson, that's why we call Poisson reverse. Poisson reverse meaning that the only one that you will send it reverse, in a reverse direction, is the Poisson update. Other than that, you accept the split horizon rule in normal operation. So this is just a combination between the count to infinity and the split horizon rule. And to speed up the conversions in that case, we used poison mechanism, which means that I will, in one stage, I will update the this network as infinity, which means that it's unreachable from my point of view. From my point of view, it's unreachable. If you have something else, let me know. And I will send a triggered update called poison update. And then if router 2 does not have any entry other than the one that I gave him, so it will update it as indeed unreachable and send me a reverse confirmation that indeed, from my perspective as well, it has become unreachable. So the poison reverse refers to the only exception to the split horizon rule. That even though I'm getting the poison update from router 3, but I have to confirm. I have to confirm. But other than that, the split horizon rule is applied. If it's not a poison update, then I apply the split horizon rule. If it's a poison update, then I have to send back a confirmation. Okay? So now we talked about 4 methods: count to infinity, hold down timer, split horizon rule, and split horizon rule with the poison reverse. Okay? Okay, so let's stop here.